Hi everyone. Welcome to another talk on creative confidence. My guest today is a wonderful Emmi Salonen, a fellow designer and consultant who focuses on making a positive contribution to society and the planet. Welcome, Emmi. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh,
Can you tell us a little bit about your career and what led you to where you are now?
yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the invite, Teresa. So I'm originally from Finland and I moved to London in '96 just to do my foundation in art and design, which then led into me doing my design course at university in Brighton. And then from there, via Fabrica in Italy and a couple of studios in London and Carlton Wilke in New York, I set up my own practice in 2005. So quite a few years ago now. So
Yeah.
I've been working sort of, I'd say kind of on a solo basis for most of those years. And maybe about 5 years ago, I took a little break from Studio Emmi and worked as a UK creative director for Futera. And it sort of like gave me a chance to challenge myself a bit more and learn and work as part of a bigger team, which was a great experience. And then I retreated back to Studio Emmi again, and I've been back in my sort of old model of working for the last few years. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's I'm sure we'll dive a little bit deeper onto, your practice and how you practice creativity as well, which is super interesting, and how I've learned a lot as well from. But should we start with like, what does creative confidence mean to you?
What a question, hey? I thought about this a little, and I think like the biggest learning and realization for me in terms of the creative confidence came after I left university and went to work at Fabrica. And Fabrica is this sort of like it's run by Benetton, and it was set up by Toscani years ago, based on sort of all cultures having the same value and sort of differences being something to really to be treasured. And he created this environment where people from different backgrounds and different cultures could come and explore their art further. So kind of like an MA, so you're working on your own project, but you also have client work, which was a great sort of halfway point between university and working in the industry. And me coming from university, I had sort of, without realizing, had like a really set expectation of sort of like institutionalized rules for design, like this is what good design is and this is bad design. And I sort of like tried to follow that and fit in that and worked around it and so on. But at Fabrica, they did this great thing where every week everyone had to meet at this auditorium, and you'd have to present what you're working on, sort of work in progress, like completely didn't matter how rough it was, didn't matter if it's just an idea that you talk through. And then absolutely everyone else, like all these, I don't even know how many people were there, maybe close to 160 or something. They would just sort of like shout their opinion on the work in progress that you're doing. And quite quickly, I noticed that it's not really, it's just a matter of opinion. It wasn't really so much about work. Like I had somebody shouting that way, like, no, I really don't like it. And somebody else shouting that, I think it's great. And they start like arguing between one another. And I'm just like standing there in the front, kind of going like, okay. So this is what design is like. It's just a perception and it's just what it
Mm,
means for you. And it sort of really helped me break a lot of boundaries that I had built or
mm,
that I've been taught to, and sort of helped me to trust my own intuition and my own like process and my own storytelling. And I think that was the biggest transformation in terms of like confidence, just
mm,
trusting that if I do right by the project in front of me and right by the clients that I'm working with. And if they are happy, then it's good. And all the other sort of questions and wanting to be perfect and so on, it's just obstacles in a way that you sort of emotionally might have to go through, but it should validify your design or your skills.
Yeah, I love that. It really resonates with me as well, because yeah, it it is about being authentic as well, isn't it? To
Yeah.
just follow your intuition is just so important.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Not everyone's gonna like it. It's not for everyone to like it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Definitely.
yeah, as long as you're like in your, following your intuition, your path, doing what you have to do and what makes you feel happy and feel good about putting it out there, then yeah, it
Yeah.
does really build it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose another sort of like time in my 20 odd year career came a few years ago when I mentioned about going to work at an agency after working for myself, because I felt like I had a very set routine of doing things after sort of 13 or so odd years working for myself. And I really felt like I wasn't challenging myself or wasn't being challenged that much. And the confidence sort of started to lack, not because I didn't trust that I knew I was what I was doing, but I felt like, oh, I'm not learning anymore. Like I'm not sort of being pushed necessarily. So I removed myself from my comfort and put myself in a situation where it was completely different, and I was looking after other people and sort of their creative development and definitely being challenged. And I did really enjoy it, and I really learned from it a lot. But then sort of went through also quite bad burnout, which we can talk about more, and took some time off and then sort of reevaluated everything and figured that actually working for myself is really the method for me. But
Mm,
now I have sort of like a wider network, different tools, different ways of approaching things, working more on the collaborative sort of um, projects and like seeking out people who have complementary skills, so I'm
mm.
not so isolated with things. So it's kind of like a different look at creative confidence, but and something that I think all of us sort of face once we have been in the industry for like number of years. So there's different um challenges that you then have to overcome in terms of confidence the longer you work in the creative industries. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's always obstacles to get over, whether it's like, the feeling stagnated or, burning out.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, like, kind of from my personal experience as well. Um, um, yeah, figuring out as well, like what you're good at and what are your strengths. That's like something that really takes years to find out and to learn,
yeah.
and you're always learning as well, like, and as you I like what you mentioned there about getting yourself out of your comfort zone, because that's something that I think that is, if anyone's watching, that's like a really good tip to take from this talk, because it's where the magic happens, is where, like, if when you put yourself out there and
Yeah.
you're you're
Yeah.
completely, because you go in with curiosity, you go in with like an open mind, and
Mm,
this is what being creative is about as well, isn't it? It's about keeping learning, keeping on,
yeah.
changing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, I sort of found out, or it was reconfirmed, that it's other people who often help you to understand where your strengths are, because you
Mm,
kind of like overlook it, or sometimes our strengths are so they come so easy to us that we don't even see them as strengths. So therefore it was a really good experience for me to put myself in the middle of like other people again and notice like, okay, I can actually do this quite well, but gosh, yeah, like a lot to learn in this area and so on. And yeah, it was really, really great. I did enjoy it. There's a lot of good that came from that challenge. And yeah, learning is so important for creativity, isn't it? It's really where a lot of the inspiration stems from. And I think,
Definitely.
yeah, and I think it's actually one of the uh, huge things that I love about graphic design, that I get a new client, and I learn a lot about their business. And I have to learn a lot about their business in order to sort of communicate their message and their stories in the best visual way I can. And so there's a really nice element of learning in
Mm.
being a graphic designer that's always there.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of learning about yourself is another level of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Can you, on that, can you share with us when you first realized that you were creative?
Oh, what a question! I I don't know, because I was like doing so much crafts as a kid
Mm,
with my mum. It was sort of the activity that bonded us, and what I grew into and what she still does, ceramics and painting and all this. So I sort of grew into that. And
mm,
similarly, my dad is a maker, so he's a carpenter and an electrician, so he makes a lot with his hands.
yeah.
Uh, Going back to like this, my grandparents' generation, and my granddad was a pattern cutter, and you know, it's all there. It was all sort of
Yeah.
surrounding me. So I didn't quite have like a moment of realization. I was just sort of brought into the environment of making. But
Mm,
the idea that that could become a career was a huge revelation, after I moved to London and did my foundation. And I thought I wanted to be a photographer. So
mm.
I into my foundation, I was like, yeah, I'll be a photographer, and then discovered graphic design, and I was like, oh, what's this? This is what it is. I like this. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, in terms of sort of realizing I'm a creative person, I don't know.
Mm,
I think we are all creatives. All
yeah.
of yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I, but I like it how how you mentioned, obviously you grew up around it and everything, but then there was a moment there where you were like, hang on a second, I can make this my living, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like quite a moment, isn't it? When you go like, actually, I can do something that I like for fun.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it took some convincing, uh like, especially my dad for years. He was like, what is it that you do? What is it you
Yeah, I
do?
don't think my parents understand it very well. They just think, yeah, I think when I was on illustration, they would understood it a bit better. With graphic design, they're kind of like, do you make the
Yeah.
newspapers? Is that what you do? Like, no.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
have you got any specific practices or techniques that you use to boost your creative confidence or your creativity?
Yeah, I think it would be maybe a good time to mention my creative ecosystem model, which is how
Yes.
I know you. So during the burnout that I mentioned, I sort of the backstory to that is that obviously it had been sort of slowly creeping upon me over a period of time. It didn't just appear one day, but I just noticed that I was constantly exhausted, and I kept sort of cutting my social time with friends shorter and cutting sort of my exercise, and but still like just couldn't catch up on sleep and couldn't catch up on like the energy levels that I sort of had a memory of having once upon a time. And yeah, it's sort of just one day overwhelmingly came to me that, you know what, I'm just burned out. I don't have the desire even to design anymore. And truthfully, I felt like I'm don't have it anymore. I've lost that spark entirely. And this is when I hand in my notice at the agency where I was working, and just decided to take a good amount of time off, initially a half a year, which then turned into a year. And in that year, I sort of I did a few courses on like design, like surface design and other making courses, and did a lot of traveling, and sort of with the intention of meeting makers specifically to talk to them about their like lifestyle and making and challenges and all that. And I didn't really trust or even dare to hope that the spark would come back, but it did. It sort of it raised its head one day, and one day I just had an idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to make that? And it just kind of like took me by surprise, and I was like, oh, making, yes, like I'd love to do that again. And then slowly, like I started having ideas, and I started wanting to make and making, and got back to designing again. And all that sort of combined with the time I spend in nature, specifically in like the Finnish archipelago, and sort of looking around in these ecosystems that I was surrounded by, just made me think how everything in nature is just so interconnected and interdependent, and like I should look at creativity in the same way, that it doesn't just exist in this silo here during my working hours, or when I switch the creativity button on, like it's there constantly in different sort of shapes and forms. And I had actually neglected it. I hadn't really given it the nourishment that it required in order for me to sustain it and keep going. And I wanted to sort of make sure that I intentionally pay attention to areas in life that sort of give me the input in order for me to be able to give my creative output out, so that there's this sort of like nice cycle of a bit like breathing with the creativity, breathing creativity in and breathing it out. And I figured that there's 5 areas that I really need to be mindful of in order to do that. So connection, like connecting to yourself and others, wonder, which is all about inspiration and learning, pause, which is just taking time for reflection and like listening to your intuition, movement, so movement of our moods as well as our body, and joy, which is just the pure joy of making and being in the flow. And then if I very consciously sort of make sure that I have those areas fed into my week, not sort of like hour for this and 5 minutes for this, but in whatever way they come that fit to my daily like rituals and habits and so on, then I'm much more likely to be able to sustain my creative practice for the next 20 years. And the more I sort of talked about this and the more I thought about it, kindly, the more people wanted to hear about it. So these days I now give talks and workshops on creative ecosystem, and sort of try and help other creatives in sort of supporting their creative energy and inspiration, and preventing them from getting to that stage where you're really having a burnout, because it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you mentioned, that was how I met you, and I have to say that it was a little bit life-changing to
Oh,
see it all
wow.
so, nicely. These are simple things that we neglect all the time, and just seeing it all systemized and put in a simple form, but in a very kind of like honest, with honest storytelling as well. It was really, really helpful, and I think that anyone who has a chance, please do it, because it's incredible, really. And yeah, I put in that question there about the techniques and on purpose, so I'm very glad we got into it.
Oh, what amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Emmy, just to kind of like round it up, what advice would you give to a younger Emmy starting out?
Oh gosh, I'd say just trust the process and trust yourself and don't wait for anyone else to make it happen, but take charge of your own sort of journey and your own making and have fun. Have a lot of fun and make sure you take those breaks and
I
don't
love
feel
that.
yeah, that's quite a few. That's like a long list of advice there, but there you go.
It is, yeah, no, but it's so important. It's really, really important to kind of take the breaks because otherwise, you can't just be outputting all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, Emmy, thank you so, so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you,
Um,
Teresa.
uh,
Really nice
I
to have you invite.
again, anyone watching this, please go and check Emmy's creative ecosystem out. And if there's a workshop, sign up for it because it is amazing and life changing. So there you go.
Oh wow. I would
Thank
recommend
you.